Why is nobody talking about Broadside? The pop punk four-piece just released their best album to date. They just finished a headlining tour in support of it, and yet there's not a single review of this album on YouTube. So today I want to talk about Into the Raging Sea, the 2020 release of Broadside. I want to start, as I always do, by looking at the physical copy of this CD. Broadside is no longer with Victory Records, so if there's any time to support the band, it's now. So I'm glad I got this physical copy of the CD of Into the Raging Sea. It's the only album I own physically from Broadside, but it's also my favorite album, which is why I picked it up. The CD, gratefully, is in a jewel case. I didn't have to repurpose a Kids Bop CD to put this in my collection. Unfortunately, it's kind of a cheap jewel case. It barely holds the CD in place. If I'm not careful, the CD can just fall out. The CD itself has a really nice printing of artwork on there, contrasts the album art very nicely. Nothing in there, just black. And then it's got the track listing on the back. Something very odd with this CD that I haven't seen before. All it has is a single page as the insert. There's no lyric booklet. It's got the album art and it's got thank yous from the band, and that's all it is. So kind of disappointing. I would have loved to see some bonus artwork in the lyric sheet. I would have loved to be able to read along with the lyrics in the lyric book while I'm listening, but newly independent, you get what you pay for. This was $5. So I can't really complain. I'm happy to have a physical copy of my favorite Broadside album. And it's good to know that the band got most of this money that I spent on the album. So that's the CD. Not much to talk about there, but I do want to go track by track and put each song in a tier list and then give my overall terrible opinion on this album. Let's get started. Okay, we are back in my trusty Excel tier list. Let's start ranking these tracks, starting with The Raging Sea. Like any great opening track, this is going to set the tone for the record, and I think The Raging Sea does that perfectly. You can feel the frustrations that Broadside had with the music they were making, what the label was telling them to do, and you can feel the anger directed at the label in this song, and it really makes me excited to hear the direction that this album is going to take. So I think this is the perfect opening song to grab your attention. Easy A tier for me. Foolish Believer is a single from this album. It takes the themes set up in The Raging Sea and builds on them in a much more frantic track. All these vocals here blend perfectly with some really interesting guitar work as well. The lyrics here hit hard, and the delivery just accentuates them. This is one of those rare songs where the verses are just as interesting as the chorus. However, this chorus absolutely rips, and I can look at the title of this song and know exactly in my head what it sounds like, which is rare for me. So this one easily S tier. Over Dramatic starts with a nice guitar riff that leads it to some softer vocals from Ollie. Thing that holds this track back from being really, really excellent is its lyrics for me, except for the second verse. I think the lyrics here are kind of weak, a little weird, a little shamey. I don't know. Just don't hit with me as hard as I wish they would, which is a bummer because this track is catchy. And it's another song I can look at and know exactly what it sounds like. All that said, this is still an A tier track for me. Even though it's not my favorite on the record, I still think it's really solid. That's going in. Nights Alone is not my favorite song on the record by any stretch of the imagination. However, I did get to hear this song live, and even the lead singer admitted that there's a pretty simple message to this one. I'll let you figure that out what it is. I think it's pretty obvious. It's just a fun song. It was fun to hear live, although when it comes on the record, I'm kind of just waiting for the next song. So that's a B tier song for me. First B tier song. When Nights Alone comes on, The reason I'm always waiting for the next track is because the next track, Heavenly, is one of my favorites on the record. I think it has one of the best choruses here, some of the best vocal delivery here, and some really solid lyrics to boot, especially for a love song in the pop punk genre. Easy S tier for me. Clarity is a little bit of a slowdown for the album. Got a slow guitar progression and some soft vocals from Ollie to begin it. But really, here my favorite part is the chorus. It's my favorite moment in this album in terms of vocal delivery. And then the closing minute overlays vocals together, makes it a really exciting listen, and ultimately makes it one of my favorite tracks on this album. So Clarity is going to be a S tier from me. I'm not a huge fan of Dancing on the Ceiling. I think the verses are pretty boring, but there is some interesting guitar work and drumming that save this from being a completely forgettable song. That said, it is a B tier for me. Next up is Seasons. Got some atmospheric guitars to open on this one, which is a nice change of pace in terms of guitar work. And then some stunning vocal deliveries and lyrics turn what should have been a pretty boring track into a pretty strong track. And for that reason, it's an A for me on Seasons. Next up is Breathe You In. Again, not my favorite track here. I wonder what I would think of these tracks on their own, because I think Breathe You In is a really nice song. It's a really good song. But after hearing every other song before it, it kind of just blends in and it's not forgettable, but it just turns into like another song on this record that just, it doesn't differentiate itself from the rest of the album. For that reason, Breathe You In, it is a B tier for me. Next up is The Setting Sun. The drummer really gets a chance to shine here, especially in the opening seconds. Got some chanty vocals at the end of it that I'm not a huge fan of. Not my favorite track here, but I still think it's good. It's going to be a B tier for me on The Setting Sun. Burning at Both Ends is the closing track of this album. It really ties everything together lyrically. It contrasts the opening song, The Raging Sea, in such a way that it makes you feel like you went on a journey from the Raging Sea to Burning at Both Ends. That said, I think it's a strange way to close this album out. It is so different than everything else. It almost feels like a hidden track or a bonus track. However, it's still a good song. It's a good way to end the album. It's not a strong point, but high B tier, borderline A tier for me for Burning at Both Ends. Track on Into the Raging Sea ranked. I love to see that there's 3 S tiers, and even the worst song is only a B tier. That's a solid album for me. A high A tier, maybe even an S tier album. Certainly the best album by Broadside. I had written them off as a band I was never going to get into, but I liked this album so much, I decided to drive 2 hours when they came to my state to go see them, and I'm glad I did because they put on a really great show. Highly recommend going to see them live. Highly recommend that you pick up some of their merch or their physical music, or at least stream them. Give them some love. Show them we want more music from them. It's been 2 years since this release, so I think we can expect new music from them soon. I certainly hope so. And when that day comes, I will be reviewing that album, letting you know my thoughts, throwing it into this tier list, and comparing with other Broadside songs. So let me know what you think of this in the comments. This is just my terrible opinion, but I would love to know your terrible opinion on this album and on Broadside in general. So I will see you guys next time.